Yes, so thank you. Welcome, everybody, to our portion of this great Adobe DITA World 2020 conference. And it's going to be myself and my colleague, Pim Bekker, that are going to be talking to you about the importance of user-centric and quality content. Just to introduce myself, I'm the guy on the left, technology director at Etteplan. I've been with the company for, well, I would say just almost as long as my other colleague, Pim Bekker here, in technical documentation. So at Etteplan we're about 3,500 people. We do engineering, we do IoT, and we do technical documentation. In the tech doc field, we are close to about 600 people in there, and I would say I've been in that industry for close to 20 years now. I've done a lot with controlled language, so simplified English, style guide implementations, and and that's my email address. Pim, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. I'm a solution architect. You don't see it maybe on the picture there, but I'm getting gray, so that's why I'm a senior solution architect. And I'm doing this now for about 20 years, like Barry. And I'm mainly focusing on the tools that you need to create technical information by implementing all kind of tooling that we use internally or for our customers to create content. And I started my career in using FrameMaker to create all kind of automated publications.
Good.
20 years ago.
Thank you. And of course, you have the ability to go gray, rather than me. I don't have that. So
it's
thank you for Well, at least I pointed it out myself. So okay, so I'll start off with talking to everyone a little bit about the importance of quality user-centric content. And what we mean with that is there are different angles to look at why content is such an important asset of the organization. And I would want to do that by walking you through these macro trends, globalization, digitization, etc. As you can see on the left, and if we see those types of macro trends, then what does that mean for content? So, well, first and foremost, it's a compliance issue, regulatory affairs. I mean, and I think that's maybe the oldest reason. When I got into TechDoc 2 decades ago, a lot of our customers were basically trying to meet standards. If you were in Europe and you wanted to export your product within the European Union, then it was often the case that you had to provide the documentation into the language of the country to which you exported. But it would be the same if you wanted to market yourself in the US or in Asia. There were certain standards around that you needed to comply with. And yes, those standards said that you had to provide technical documentation with your product. Didn't necessarily say anything about the quality, and that's where things have started to change in the last 5 years or so, because with the use of data, but also these IEEE and ISO standards, they talk more about how to really write your content in those manuals, and of course the use of style guides, simplified technical English is one aspect where you have to comply with if you're in aerospace and defense, but that standard is being used around the world by other industries as well, more and more, and style guides like the Microsoft Manual of Style and others are being used more and more because people are starting to see the importance more of the use of quality content, if you will. So, and the same goes with the next one is outsourcing. So if you're looking to outsource your content creation to best cost countries, and of course this can work, but of course you need to align your global writing team, whether they're based in the US, Europe, or Asia. They all need to meet the same standards. If you're moving to PaaS models, so product as a service, so let's say that you have a machine and you're selling that based on usage. So that means that the customer is paying you based on the use, and you do not even get paid if it's, for instance, if it's not being used. In other words, there's downtime. Then it's in everyone's interest that downtime is minimized, and good content can play an important role there because it can really help minimize the content if it's clear, if it's not ambiguous, If it tells, for instance, the field service engineers very clear information on what he or she needs to do, it can absolutely help there. And if you want to align your global writing team to ensure that you have also one voice, right, towards your customers, so that you're not, whether you are in marketing or a technical documentation or other parts of the organization, that we're using one voice towards our customers, that we are using consistency in terminology, etc. That can also improve your branding. And then it can ensure that your content is future-proof. It can provide metrics. It can help save translation costs. It can do all sorts of things. Look at it this way. If you want to be able to connect later to IoT, and Pim will talk a little bit about that later, if you want to be able to facilitate artificial intelligence or publish your content to augmented reality, then good quality content is also going to be needed there. So, and then last but not least, a user-centric content optimization strategy is the one that puts your target customer or your reader in the main focus. So it's no longer about compliance where I started. It's really about servicing or finding the best way to service your global customer base. What does that mean as far as this particular graph is concerned? So where we used to be with information 1.0, where you would create one format, one owner, one delivery, one publisher. You want to go towards at least information 4.0 with many formats, many owners, many deliveries, and many publishers. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you can just, continue to write in let's say, Microsoft Word with no structure, with no XML, with no standard like DITA, for instance, in place. It means that things have to be changing. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to change everything, but you at least need to change towards these types of goals, towards AI, towards Industry 4.0, as we want to call it, where IoT is connecting us. Industry 4.0 also requires information 4.0. So we'll talk a little bit more about that today. And with that being said, I'll hand it over to Pim.
Yes. The trend today is to create more and more content that is published on a online platform, a content delivery platform, content delivery portal, how do you want to call it? So in Etteplan, where we create technical information for our customers, it started 20 years ago with creating technical manuals that will be published in PDF using FrameMaker. But it was really focused on creating content for a book that needs to be put with the machine so that when it's broken, you can take the book and read how to fix the issue. The trend of today, of course, is that there will be, or there is already, a portal where somebody can find the most up-to-date information about the product that they are in front of. So with the correct serial number, with the latest information, and it doesn't matter if it's printed on paper or if it's on the web or your mobile device or within an AR/VR device. But the main problem is that a lot of the content is still created inside those business units. So we are implementing this content delivery portal for our customers, where we also will talk with the other business units so that there will be information that can share. If we create, for example, illustrations for the technical manuals, they can be perfectly reused in learning content, or they can perfectly be reused as content for a service system to order spare parts. So on the one hand, you will save a lot of time and money because you don't have to recreate content in the different business units itself. But you also will have the same look and feel in the end on the portal. So if you're using the same source for the different output format. So on the left side are all the sources, CRM system, technical product data, for example, CCMS. And on the other side, there are the users, the consumers of the information, with a certain publication channel, like an app or a browser, or maybe even still PDF. But the point is that this cannot be created inside those business units or silos, if you want to call it like that. You need to talk with the other departments and make them aware that a lot of content that has been created can be reused and can be shared if you make it future-proof. So that would be the next slide. Instead of pushing information to a user, it will be a pull mechanism. The machine is capable of collecting all kinds of data and can generate a work order before the machine will fail, for example. Or if you have to do a certain task, it can collect all the information that is needed for that task and maybe do some other things at the same time, because you're in that area, working in that area, maintaining a certain area in the machine. Then because of all the information that is captured, you could say, okay, now you have opened this part of the machine, then it would also make sense to do some other maintenance. And if the information is like intelligent information, you can collect this information. But it's a big step if you have been working in creating technical information as a book, PDF, so document-oriented, to go to user-centric or intelligent content. Slide, please. So the idea is, of course, that you create a single piece of information that can be reused in all kinds of publications. So a technical writer must learn not to create content or a page, but to create maybe more like a script. And he doesn't know how this script will be used when it's published. So all kind of information must be in this topic. We're using DITA by default. So it must be a very rich topic, and a piece of that topic will be used in any of these publication formats. So we're moving more and more to digital publications for our customers. And we also get requests, okay, can you extract the same information that is in our manuals so that we can use something like a virtual assistant? First selection of all the support questions that we get. Or sometimes it's easier to watch a movie instead of reading some procedures. So the same content could be published as a movie. We also have solutions for that. So the same script could be used. A technical writer has defined certain steps how to assemble, disassemble a part. Well, that same script can be used to build an animation in a 3D environment. So why start within every business unit from scratch? Why not make one script and generate the content that you need for the audience that it's requesting? Next slide, please. So we have a customer in the Netherlands, Bonedam. They make entry solutions, so this revolving doors, for example, in buildings and airports. They control access for that kind of assets. And when we start to work for Bonedam, they had unstructured FrameMaker creating PDF files, no CMS in place, no controlled language in place. So it was not uncontrolled on level 0, where it was not part of the job, part of the product. It was because they had a department where they create their content, but Well, it was unstructured. So we have implemented a couple of processes at Bonedam. So we started to implement a CCMS. We started to implement DITA, and we also implemented and teached Bonedam how to write in controlled language. Next steps that we are now implementing at Bonedam is that we are moving to a digital platform, and also that we will look into reusing that content for other kind of solutions, like maybe the virtual assistant that can help people on the website to find their information. So we will not be at level 5 by the end of this year, but we're moving step by step from an unstructured environment to a structured environment for controlled language and also multiple output formats. Next slide, please.
Yes, and just to comment on that, Pim. So the idea was that we spoke with in this case Bonedam. We also looked for a use case. We looked at what were their specific business needs, right? We can make a content strategy, but how does that content strategy fit in with the business strategy? What are you trying to basically accomplish in the end? Is it less downtime? Is it being able to, of course, have a certain professionalism when you provide your field service engineers with this content? What are the metrics? What are the KPIs that you're looking to achieve? And so you cannot go necessarily from step 0 to step 5 in one go. It was a gradual process because this is not something that you can do overnight, of course. But the idea is what we did at the first couple of steps was always having in mind that in the end we wanted to be at step 5 in this case. So we wanted to be into at least optionally be able to make the content future-proof so that at some point in time we were at least able to create or to connect to IoT or virtual assistants and that sort of thing. So that being said, go ahead.
Yeah, here's a very simple example. And I know that in real life this could be much more complex, but it's just to explain what has been done in the past and what we are doing at the moment. So in the past, what a technical writer would write in or in FrameMaker or even also in DITA was what has been published. And moving to future-ready content, a technical author doesn't know where it's going to be used, in what kind of platform or kind of format. We have to learn them to create more than 100%, then there will be published in one of the output channels. So as a simple example, if you move to digital platforms, you need to make sure that you have things like keywords so it can be easily found, that you have alternative titles, in it at a mobile, that when the title is too long, you can show an alternative title. You need metadata. You're talking about a certain assembly or a part or whatever, and you want to connect this maybe to okay, now I know how to assemble this, but I see some of the parts are broken. I need to order it. So how do I connect to a spare part ordering system, for example? So I think in the old days, 100% what was created by the author was published. Today, he needs to create more than 100%, 120, 130, 140% of what will be published in one of the output channels. And of course, metadata is very important. Make sure that you have all the information for digital platforms. Maybe even have some additional content there when you use text-to-speech, so that process is optimized, and you don't need expensive projects to make that work. Please, slide. So to show you a real life example, this is what has been created by technical writers, and I will zoom in a bit, and zooming in will be moving to the next slide. Yeah, this is a real manual as an example. Again, a very simple example. What the technical writer did here was that there was a maintenance task list created. In this example, do a general inspection. And the frequency would be, you have to do this on a daily basis. And then there's a reference to that task, do a general inspection below this table. If I look into the content management system, if I look in the topic 5.3 with the number 5.3 in this PDF file, there was no information about that this was a daily task. Okay, I can see it's a task because it's DITA, but there was no information it was daily because that was already done in the 5.2 table. So in this very simple example, we need to make sure that a technical author is going to add metadata to this topic so that when this is published in a content delivery portal and I have a maintenance app and I want to search for my daily tasks, that I can get a list like a work order. This is what I have to do today. It depends a bit on the use case. If you put that content in the topic itself, if that is static metadata, you could do that. If it's more dynamic, if this topic is going to be reused for multiple installations, and one time it's daily and another time it's weekly or whatever, because one building will be open 24 hours a day and another building will be only open for 8 hours a day. It could differ. So you need to implement then a different way to add that metadata, but without metadata in a digital platform, it will not be possible to easily find, for example, the daily inspections that you need to do. Next slide, please. So what we did is we set up a content management system, and this is just a schematic overview. Any CCMS could be implemented like this, and you could use the Open Toolkit, or if you have another publishing engine, maybe with FrameMaker, you could do exactly the same thing. You set up a CCMS, it connects with an editor. In the editor, we have also implemented Hyper STE, the Simplified Technical English Checker, where Barry will a bit more. So in the source, you will create this DITA XML, and the plugins will define the output format. This is what we have been set up for Bonedam. And we started by supporting them to at first publish to PDF and later on move to digital publications. So if I may refer to the 1 to 5 maturity levels in the slide before, this would be on, let's say, level 2, where we use a CCMS, where we use a structured approach, where we are able to publish this into PDF, but with capability of doing a lot of reuse and optimize translation processes, all the let's say basic things you do with a CCMS. Next slide. Exactly the same content can immediately be published on a mobile device or in a web browser, but then we need to talk with the technical writers that, okay, you have been creating PDF files, but now it's going to be digital, and in a digital platform you will have a bit more possibility. So you can create filters. I'm like a certain audience. I'm an owner of a building, so I want to find all the information about the owner. Normally, the owner information in the publication itself, in a document, because it's an owner manual. But that doesn't mean by default that this owner information is also available in your. So you must inherit it from the map, or you have to make sure that the metadata will be added. So maintenance interval, the product name, what kind of information, what context do I have to see this? Is this cleaning? Is this maintenance? Is this predictive maintenance? All that information must be available in a content delivery board. That will take you to the next step where you can do multiple output formats. We also had some examples of level 3, where you could reuse your information to create training material. So then again, not 100% what a writer creates will be published. He creates a bit more. In that way, it can be also the source for training material. That could be like level 3. Level 4 could be right time, the right information at the right time using augmented reality, virtual reality. I look at a machine. Machine will be recognized based on the 3D recognition of the machine itself, maybe based on a beacon or based on a QR code, depends also on the use case. And then I can show the correct information within an AR/VR device. Maturity level 5 is something that we are also looking into next to the department that Etteplan, where we do technical information. We have another department with lots of people doing IoT. So we did a project. What if the product would be able to talk with the technical information that is available for it? What if the product, when the product is generating all kind of information about running hours, about error, anything, would I be able to use that information after analyzing it to query a content delivery portal and provide the correct information so that the machine can be fixed the shortest amount of time? Or when a technical service engineer is going to visit the customer, that he at least knows what kind of product is at the customer, what kind of configuration is there, and what information do I need to take with me to make sure that I will do it the first time right. Next slide, please.
Yes.
That would be you, Barry.
Yes, let's see this in practice. So I'll also discuss a little bit, Pim, of what you showed us earlier here with regards to the actual content and how quality content can actually, or end user-centric content, help each other out, really. So they really do facilitate each other. So we have here a FrameMaker. We have, as you mentioned, Pim, HyperSTE, which is our language checker tool that's been around since 2003. Maybe good to mention that our first authoring tool that we supported was indeed FrameMaker. I'm not sure which version it was at the time, but it was indeed FrameMaker. So we've been using HyperSTE as a plugin for FrameMaker for, well, 17, 18 years now, I would say. And the version I'm going to show you can be on-premise, but I'm going to show you the latest version because we now also have it as a subscription model that works in the cloud, where you can do checks. It can check this page, for instance, for you, but you can also do it on full document level. And you can see that there's colors appearing, and by clicking on those colors, we see an information window appearing on the right-hand side, and another information window that allows us to reuse each other's approved sentences. That would then allow us to further improve this document, where you have the user-centric approach on one hand, and then there's the quality content approach on the other hand, applying with standards like Simplified English or Microsoft Manual of Style or other style guides for that matter, with the idea that we create content that is clear and easy to understand by our end users. Yes, it can help you save translation costs. I believe that with Bone and Dam, they were able to save about 50% in translations, and that was only on level 1 and 2. That didn't even have anything to do with the multiple publication output formats that Pim showed. But purely by doing this already, even if you just publish to PDF, you can start saving costs and improving the quality of your content already. So in this case, Service Laptop needs to be just generic laptop, and then you can do a word-for-word replacement. You can create reports. So you can do that on multiple files. So if I create a report on a bunch of files here, then they are created and go here it is. It shows us that these documents were on a compliance rating of 68.3%. Gives us other ratings as well for readability, for Flash Kincaid grade, for translatability, similarity, with some other colors on how to read those ratings. And then on the bottom here, we see a high to low frequency, giving us errors on, in this case, there's still some words that need to be added to the Bonedam dictionary, and other error messages. We want to get more results. We go to detailed results. And in this case, we get a summary, since I did it on multiple files, the report. It shows us a score per category. If you want to know more, then we basically do a drop down on, for instance, terminology and spelling. And then we can look at, for instance, the non-approved words. How many times did service laptop actually appear? Which dictionaries were used, and how are they looking in their context, etc. So whenever you are doing check with HyperST, this is really a good baseline to start with, by not even applying any of the writing rules, not even applying any of the approved terminology that you can use, but just to see where you are. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that works in practice later on. Now that I am in here, I also want to show you that's a premiere. So here at DITA World, we're happy to give you the premiere on the release that we will bring out next week. And that is going to be that we are now also having HyperSTE as a plugin to Chrome. And through Chrome, you have the ability to check your content inside Adobe Experience Manager, so AEM. And you will be doing that by simply clicking on the HyperST icon next to the text. And we also are introducing a brand new user interface where you have the ability to simply scroll, make your changes, and make some changes here and move on. You can then also within here also create reports on this particular file, and it will then publish that for you. Here we go. Yeah, some great features here that we're quite proud of that we are able to show today. So we have that ability starting next week when version 9.5 will come out. Also to show you that inside the portal you have the ability to, I'm in the Bonedam account now, of course, but to manage your users. You can give them different user roles. They can be an admin, they can be a terminology manager if you want them to approve the terms. They can also be a technical writer, where they have the ability to add terms but not approve them. You can work with multiple dictionaries. You can create different profiles that would then allow you to create your own rule sets, if you will. And then once the writer is ready to work with it, he or she can then go to My Settings, select which dictionaries they need to work with, which profiles they need to work with. And since we're talking about XML, we can also do conditional checking. That means is that you can load the DITA DTD, for instance, and let HyperSTE recognize whenever it sees certain tags. You can tell it, okay, you see tag A, check for procedural rules. You see tag B, check for marketing-related rules. It's whatever type of profile you would like it to check against. So we call that conditional checking. You can work with multiple dictionaries. So we have the primary dictionary, it's the STE dictionary. The secondary dictionary, in this case, is the Bonedam dictionary. But you can also work with additional dictionaries in case you have projects or divisions or customers that require their own specific terminology. That's all possible. So it's quite flexible. Yes. Now going back to FrameMaker, maybe good to mention this one, if I'm not mistaken, Pim. Yeah, this one, right, where you are talking about the addition of metadata, correct?
Yes, correct. Here's an example where metadata has been added inside.
Yes, yeah, very good. So you can really see that the use of user-centric content together with content quality, how they really facilitate each other. It's by having just content quality in place, where you create your content, you can of course already go places. Really important, because whether you're using user-centric content or not, at the end of the day, that's what your customer base is going to read, and that's how that's going to reflect bad or good on your product. So, but by having both in place, you can really go towards that level 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 5 later on. It's the combination of these two that will really get you there, with of course the addition of other aspects. Very briefly on the implementation. So what's really involved here? Now with content quality, you need to the steps are standardizing on terms. So that means that if your global writing team, if they're using multiple words that can have the same meaning, or if they're using the same word that can have multiple meanings, that means that you can confuse your end user. So that's important that you standardize your terms so that one word can basically only have one meaning. You need to define your style guide, but by defining your style guide, keep the principles of controlled language in mind. And what is controlled language? That is a way of writing that creates clarity towards your end users. There's a training course that we give that normally takes about 2 days on site, or about 9 hours online, that I would welcome you to ask us more about as well, where we go through different sections on, okay, so how do I need to write in order to create that clarity? And day 1 is the theory, day 2 is a workshop where we ask our customers to bring their own content to the table, where we can then convert that and discuss that and see how we can make that better. And we would then also introduce this to other people outside of technical writing, like engineers or subject matter experts that normally are also involved in the technical writing process, one way or another. And we'll also be able to create awareness amongst those, because that's also really important when you do this, to create awareness amongst everyone that is going to be impacted by a certain implementation like this. Analyzing your content to define your roadmap, your milestones. You cannot tell where you're going unless you don't know where you've been. So how much are you spending right now? What are your costs? What are the goals that you're looking to achieve? And then Hyper-SD is embedded in FrameMaker, in Adobe Experience Manager, and helping you to get there, to help you. And it basically checks your work, but it's really the terminology together with a trained writer, together with Hyper-SD, that's going to give you the best results. We've trained over 3,000 writers, and that's what we have really seen. Tim, can you maybe briefly discuss?
Yeah, on the user-centric content side, the same as when writing in standards like DITA, and a technical writer will need to understand his audience. Also, on the, let's say, metadata level, you need to understand your audience. So that is also something you need to take into account. You need to define your use case. How could I use the content that has, for example, been created for a technical manual, maybe in a service app? Maybe there is already an existing service app that can generate work orders for a service engineer, but he still needs to look up some of the other stuff in a separate system, or maybe even in a PDF file printed in the back of his van. So a use case could be, I want to be able to reuse my content that is created for the technical manuals in a service app. So how do I make sure that I can query that content? So I need to make sure that that information is well structured, that it's of high quality, of course, but also I can run a query and get the correct information. For this, you need to connect also to other business units, break down the silos. You need to talk with service departments. You need to talk with engineering departments. You probably also need to talk with marketing departments. I've seen a customer, and don't have to mention the name, but in the technical manuals, the name of the product was completely different than in marketing, because marketing had a better idea of naming the product. But if this all comes together in one single portal, it would be very confusing if for the marketing part of the portal, the product is named A, and in the technical manuals, the product is named B. That would not be a very good idea, I think. So you need to define the required metadata for those use cases together with other business units. Maybe I need to be able to add things like an assembly ID or a system ID or product ID, so that connecting later on with the other units, the other business units, would be easier and not a very expensive project, because you cannot find the link.
Yeah, and that's
a lot
where
of
also
information today.
Sorry,
Yeah.
no, that's also where the standardization of terminology comes in, right? Where you're able to make sure that both marketing as well as technical documentation are using the same terms. Please go ahead.
The same terms, but it's also much less confusing if, for example, the visuals in a technical manual are exactly the same as in a spare part system, and also in a training manual. And when there is some kind of visual in an AR application, if they all look alike, well, the experience of the customer is of course much better than when this would all be created based from scratch in the business units itself. Yeah. So create content that supports the life cycle of your products means that you need to do this together with the other business unit. Breaking the silos. I cannot mention it enough.
Very good. Well, thank you, Pim. So that concludes our presentation, but not before letting you know that there are a couple of freebies. There's a booklet on the right-hand side that talks about the use of clear content, simplified technical English. It's its 4th edition. It's free. It's 112 pages. We only sell ourselves on the last 2, so that means that it's quite informative. And you can request it by sending an email to me, barry.braster@etteplan.com. We also do free business case analysis. So if you're interested in what user-centric and quality content can do for you, simply contact us, and we can see, we can basically do a gap analysis or an audit, whatever you want to call it, but and let you know what it is that it can do for your particular business. For HyperST, visit simplifiedenglish.com. You can request a free 2-week trial there. For Etteplan in general, visit the Etteplan.com website. And well, there's my email. There's Pim Bekker's email for any other questions that you want to ask us afterwards as well. But we can now open, Stefan, if you want to, we can now open the Q&A session, if need be.
Thanks, guys. It's Matt here. Stefan's on a phone call wrapping something up right now. But we did have a couple of great questions in the Q&A. So if you've got access to the Q&A, you can look at that real quickly. One in particular, Alessandro was asking about triggering content by context, where context can be an array of different properties. So he was asking for just a little clarification, if you don't mind, on how you might trigger the content by context.
Well, I can try to answer that. Of course, it will depend on your use case, but context could be that I have injected metadata while publishing the content to a content delivery portal that tells something about the object it is related to, so the assembly ID, for example. The context could be what kind of audience is it? Am I an owner of a device, or am I a service engineer? And what kind of level of service engineer am I? Am I an internal service engineer, or am I a customer or third party? But what needs to be done is that enough metadata needs to be defined so that you can query your content. A simple metadata could be an error code or a combination of things. Assembly
Sure.
ID. Yeah.
Excellent.
Very much depending on the use case.
Now we've got HyperSTE is working with FrameMaker. Does it work directly with Adobe Experience Manager or any other platforms, or is this a FrameMaker specific tool for use with content?
No, it uses it's integrated in a number of authoring tools. FrameMaker being one of them. It also is integrated directly into AEM, but you do need to have Chrome working, so it will not work with Edge, for instance. And then, we support a number of other tools. I see RoboHelp. RoboHelp is actually, unfortunately, not yet on the list. But if there's a need for us to look into that, then that's not a problem. The tool has been around for 17 years, so we would be okay to integrate in that as well.
Sure. And then, are you able to see that other question at the top of the pod there, related to one content authoring?
Yeah, from AJ. Yes. As we move into one content authoring, does your system get or serve information from customer support that needs to author in a different style? Same content that appears in docs, videos. Right now, these other business units are all creating duplicated content. Yeah, that's probably more a question for you, Pim. But it should be set up that way. That you should not. I mean, with HyperSTE, for instance, you have the ability to reuse each other's content. So if I'm writing something, it can recognize into a sentence database that is centrally used. If that sentence was written already before, and then I can reuse that sentence, that is good because it will save me time. But it also makes sure that it's more consistent. And of course, if there are 100 different ways of saying the same thing and still being clear. But by reusing each other's content, you can also save a ton on translation costs. So, but it kind of, the one content authoring, of course, it kind of depends on the way it is set up within the organization. But the idea is that, of course, we reuse each other's good quality content that is then also user-centric, of course.
Excellent. I think
and one content could also mean. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
One content today, CMS might be implemented only to do a certain part of the content, and with the same tooling, you could also do other content. It could be that there's other authors involved, and you might need to duplicate some of the content. But why not use the existing processes for the translation, for creating the content, for checking the content?
Yeah.
And and it might be possible to do real one content, so create 150% and publish it in those channels where you need it with the information that you need. Or it could be that part of the content is created as separate topics, but you reuse the processes that are